Hey everyone, all right, it's after a bit of a break, it's time to get this top 50 list underway. And if you don't happen to know what top 50 list I'm talking about, let me quickly explain. I recently spent a little over 2 years learning and playing my way through Guitar World magazine's top 100 solos of all time, and documenting it here on my channel. Project now complete as of about 3 weeks ago. I needed a new guitar adventure to keep me busy and to provide some content to what has ended up becoming a growing YouTube channel, much to my surprise. Thank you for that. And this is that new project. Though sticking to pretty much the same format, obviously, that I utilized with the top 100 greatest solos list, this one will be a list of my own choosing with lots of input from you guys. Thank you again for that. Of the top 50 most underrated, underappreciated, and/or unknown guitar solos of all time. And I'm going to kick things off with this outside-the-box weirdo of a guitar solo to get the top 50 underway. With the criteria of this list being underrated, underappreciated, or unknown, we're going to drop this one firmly in the unknown category for now. Now, of course, some of you will know it. It's not that obscure. Some of you will remember these guys, especially if you're Canadian like me. It is arguably the 80s Canadian band Coney Hatch's most recognizable and, in my opinion, best song. Others of you, if you know your jazz, may recognize it for a completely different reason, but we'll get to that in a bit. Coney Hatch were a Canadian melodic hard rock band formed in Ontario in the early 80s and released, I think, 3 albums throughout the 80s and achieved a certain level of fame with a few minor rock hits within the country. Now, with the inclusion of a number of supporting act slots on major tours throughout North America with the likes of Iron Maiden, Rush, Judas Priest, they did achieve some exposure outside of their native Canada, but never did reach the level of success of their touring counterparts before eventually breaking up in the early 90s and going their own ways. I actually think that they reformed a number of years ago, but I haven't given them a listen recently. Probably relegated to club status at this point, however, sadly. Now, like I already said, the majority of their music fell into the melodic rock and hard rock genre, and they were pretty decent, and they were a fun band, and I was a fan back then. However, after re-listening to some of their old stuff the other day, it was all pretty average, generic-sounding 80s hard rock stuff, to tell the truth, except for this track from their debut album. This one stands out. I honestly don't know where this track came from. It sounds nothing like anything else that they ever recorded. Written and sung by bass player Andy Curran, who wasn't the lead singer of the band, it was the standout track on their debut album that went a long way towards getting the band signed and attracting the attention of Canadian rock legend Kim Mitchell to coming on board to produce the band's first album. A coup for the band, considering Mitchell's pedigree and popularity at the time in the Canadian music scene. When the time came in the studio to record the song Monkey Bars, Mitchell, realizing that the song had this weird angular off-center tilt to it, put it to the band, and especially guitarist Steve Shelski, that the solo as well should be just as weird and off-putting as the song itself. Steve Shelski, who had just finished a jazz guitar course at Toronto's Humber College, thought that he would have a little bit of fun with Kim Mitchell. During his jazz studies, he had learned the Miles Davis penned and Charlie Parker performed Donna Lee for jazz guitar and plopped it note for note right in the middle of Monkey Bars as the guitar solo to the track. Off-kilter enough for you, Kim, Steve said. It was all just a joke, like I said. Steve had no intention of realistically having the jazz track Donna Lee as the guitar solo to Monkey Bars. He was just having a laugh with producer Kim Mitchell. But Kim Mitchell loved it, thought it was the perfect outside-the-box type solo that the song needed. And of course, it stayed. As an aside, many people actually thought that Kim Mitchell was the one who actually played the solo to Monkey Bars, as it was very much in keeping with Mitchell's own odd but brilliant style of guitar playing. Kim Mitchell had always been very Zappa-esque in his approach to guitar playing and songwriting, so I can see how people would just assume that this oddity of a guitar solo was put down by him. Some even thought that it was either recorded and then spun backwards, or that the solo was composed and then played in reverse, because it kind of fits, but at the same time, it doesn't fit. It's a rather disturbing solo to listen to and to try and figure out just what the hell Steve Shelski was going for here. You know, of course, that's without knowing its true origin. But I'll reiterate that it was not Kim Mitchell playing this solo. This one was all Steve Shelski, both his playing and his idea, with just a nudge from Kim Mitchell to try thinking outside the box a bit. And that, my friends, is where some of you may have heard this solo before, whether you know this particular song or not. That is, like I said, if you're a jazz fan and know your jazz classics, because it's one of jazz great Charlie Parker's most famous pieces, albeit performed on a distorted electric guitar. I personally didn't know this information before this week. I've always just loved this solo and thought it was one of the weirdest, most bizarre, most awesome solos that I had ever heard. Only when I started learning and researching it a bit did I discover that it was the famous, but not famous to me, classic Donna Lee from Charlie Parker. I'm not a huge jazz fan. That said, it's a really tough little sequence of jazz scales and licks to play. It's all over the bloody place. Very tricky to finger and very difficult to remember the whole thing. I actually think I may have injured myself learning and practicing this one. My middle finger hasn't been right for about 3 days now. It's been a bit sore and hasn't been cooperating very well the past couple of nights trying to play this. You know, an accomplished jazz guitarist could no doubt just walk through this thing, but I'm not an accomplished jazz guitar player, of course, and it gave me fits all week trying to nail it down. Plus, I'm not ashamed to say that I have no idea what Charlie Parker was doing here scale and theory-wise. I can play it, but I'll be damned if I understand it. Well over my head. You know, that's the sheer genius of Charlie Parker and Miles Davis. Now, of course, in the context of this song, Monkey Bars, it's an outside-the-box type solo, not sticking to the key changes underneath it, and thus sounding quite strange and atonal. However, in its original context is where I'm lost as far as theory goes. Jazz guitar absolutely does my head in, changing scales on the fly every few seconds, dependent on whichever chord it's playing over, with all these weird diminished seventh and half diminished chords and diminished and half diminished bebop scales and whatnot. You know, like, there's a video of Joe Pass playing Donna Lee on YouTube that I watched the other night, and I just had to turn it off. I mean, it was absolutely amazing, an amazing thing to watch, but you know, just on another level of guitar playing that I can't even begin to understand. You know, jazz guitar at the highest level, just incredible. There's actually one YouTube video that breaks down Donna Lee called Donna Lee, A Nest of Verminous Bebop Scales. Verminous indeed. And this guy seemed to know his jazz guitar. So seeing that title, I don't feel so bad for not fully understanding it. I watched his breakdown. I didn't understand that either. Regardless, this is a straight up jazz solo plunked right down in the middle of a rock track. And it works beautifully in creating an atonal center to this track. And one of the strangest ear-bending solos that you'll ever hear. Brilliant stuff, and a real gleaming moment of inspiration from guitarist Steve Shelski way back in 1981 or 1982. Plus, it's a really great song. Check out the song. I'll put a link down below for it. The only song from the band that has really stood the test of time. This one I can still listen to and enjoy to this day, but especially love that solo. And that's all I got to say about that one. I hope you liked it. An odd one for sure, but with a good story behind it, I think. I hope you're well in your little guitar corner of the world, as usual. And we'll be back next week with number 49. And I've already got that all figured out what that's going to be. And, on track to move this, maybe get this done in a year. So you guys take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.